I'm on the line right now with 1/3 of the Rascals, Trey Miguel, who has quite a big opportunity in front of him. You are one of 4 men in the Impact World Heavyweight Championship match at Slammiversary. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Not too bad. Just trying to stay busy.
I understand that.
What are you doing to, stay busy besides still getting the opportunity to wrestle while we're all at home right now in quarantine?
Well, I actually have my own wrestling gym at school here in Toledo, Ohio, so I've been training on my own. I allow maybe one student to help me out a week because we have to be precautious in these times. But, I do have to stay on top of things and be prepared for what lies ahead, and that is the main event for Slammiversary, which, if you think about a year ago, I wasn't even scheduled to be on Slammiversary, and now I'm main eventing it. So it's crazy to think about.
Now, you actually bring up a good point, and I know a lot of people, I've noticed, they couldn't go to the gym. You say you have this place to go. From that point of view, do you feel like you have an advantage just conditioning-wise?
Absolutely, and it really does allow me to keep off ring rust. The time away from wrestling is taking tolls on everyone that's used to regularly performing, so you go from having such a busy schedule to where you don't really allow yourself to really feel any of the aches or pains because you're constantly moving. So when you have the time off in between shows or matches, you kind of feel everything. So I've been trying to keep myself as busy as I can so that way I don't really slow down and, get to that point of comfortability where I feel like I can relax, because I don't want to feel that way. It kind of, I don't want to say lazy, because I don't believe that anyone's lazy right now. We're just kind of left with our circumstances and the cards that we can play. I'm just blessed to have a good hand right now, if that makes sense.
Totally. Now, the title match itself has changed quite a bit in the past few weeks. It presents another variable. You had Michael Elgin and Tessa Blanchard in the match originally, and they're pulled, and a mystery competitor has been added. Does that change your preparation at all, as far as, you're very familiar with Ace Austin, who's in the match, and that's been well documented, but as far as the other, Eddie Edwards and a mystery guy, does that change anything for you at all?
Nothing changes for me, because since January, this 2020 hasn't exactly gone as planned. Because if you were to ask me how I thought this 2020 would be, I thought I'd be speaking to you right now as the X Division champion, and that isn't the case. So it's really just been a matter of being prepared for what you can't be prepared for. And at this point, if the mystery opponent is D'Lo Brown, I'm ready for him. If the mystery opponent is Scott D'Amore, I'm ready for him. If the mystery opponent is you, I'm ready for him. If the mystery opponent is Kylie Ray, I don't know if I can make a mean face at her because she's really good at smiling at people. But, you can't think about what might be. You just have to go in with the game plan that, yes, I have heat with Ace. I'm going to channel that, and I'm going to use that to try to beat him specifically, because I have a score to settle to assure that I walk out the main event with the World Championship.
I think quite a few people would actually be really happy to see Kylie Ray in there. No disrespect to D'Lo or Scott.
If Kylie Ray was in that main event, I can 100% agree with you on that. I think the world would be shocked, and I think it'd be a positive shock.
I would enjoy it. So, hey, if plans aren't finalized, that you got my vote right there.
We might be rewriting Slammiversary, man.
So, we've already noted 2 variables with the participants changing and, the quarantine throwing a wrench into things, but then you have Moose walking around as TNA champion. What do you make of that? Because it seems like inevitable that no matter who wins this match at Slammiversary, he's gonna come calling saying he's the real champion, and what do you make of that?
Have you ever played a game of basketball and a kid wasn't invited? So because he wasn't invited, he just decided to say he's the best basketball player that's even on the street? That's Moose right now.
What do you think from
that he got on eBay and bought that replica belt to walk around television tapings and say that he's the he's the TNA world champion? That just doesn't make sense.
It's been entertaining, I'll say that, but it seems like you're not too concerned with him. But getting back to the people that are actually in the title match, Ace Austin was a big part of your year last year, and I actually got to watch tonight's show early. And you cut a very inspiring promo. It was, angry, personal. You called back to your childhood and, your feud with him. What does that mean to not only, resume that feud, but see longer term storytelling in wrestling, especially when things are so much of a turnover these days with there's a different feud every week or every month?
Sure. It's kind of one of those things where you just got to roll with the punches because, like I said, if you asked me where I thought I'd be today, back in January, I'd be telling you, I'm going to be the X Division champ, and now I'm not even competing for that championship anymore. And to be doing this with Ace is kind of like Groundhog's Day. But if the X Division championship wasn't enough to make me want to tear his head off, then you can bet the World's Championship is enough to make me want to tear his head off and actually get it done this time. And with Eddie Edwards being in the match, Eddie Edwards has personal beef with Ace that, in a way, exceeds my level of beef with him. And I think if anyone isn't walking out with the championship, it's gonna be Ace because the way he's, and no pun intended, stacked his cards against himself.
So you feuded over the X Division championship. Now it's the World Championship, and there's always been this perception that the World Championship is a heavyweight championship. So how do you go into this match in particular to dispel that stereotype and still create an exciting match?
That's a really good question because I'm not blind to social media. I see some of the things people say, like, how is this kid that's 150 pounds wrestling for a world championship? How could he be the face of the company? How can he even be in contention for this? And I don't take any of that, like, oh, they're just being stupid. Because, you're right. It does have that kind of that stigma that you have to be a bigger guy, you have to be a heavyweight, but that isn't the case because I finally remember one of my favorite wrestlers in TNA history, Chris Sabin, being the world champion, and that's kind of been my biggest motivation on keeping my head screwed straight and kind of drowning out the empty cans because they always bang the loudest, and so that way I can go into this focused and clear-headed as I need to be.
So in saying all of that, and you said you didn't expect to be in this position, a few months ago, what does this singles run mean for the Rascals? Because that dynamic, with the smokeouts, and you came in as a trio, it was a fun introduction to all three of you as a group, but we haven't really seen that as much lately. So, not saying you guys would break up or anything, but how do you maintain that dynamic if you're the world champion and you're primarily going to be wrestling singles matches to defend a title?
Well, since we've been in Impact, realistically, we've only been in maybe one single handful's worth of six-man tags, so we haven't really been performing as a three-man tag group for a while now, but we always collectively, we're a brotherhood, and that's kind of what it boils down to. I understand that they have their goals of, they want the World Tag Team Championships, as, I wanted to be there with them if I had to hold one or if Dez had to hold one. There was always going to be an odd man out, and we always understood that. And we're not really in control of how things happen. The North could jump Dez and Zach one day backstage, and granted, that's gonna leave heat with me too. But they feel more inclined to settle that beef than I do, if that makes sense. And Ace Austin kind of picked his bone with me and ended up in the World Championship picture in a way that I'm not going to agree with because I was jumped backstage and I didn't even get the opportunity to have my final contendership match, and it was because of Ace, and that's my score to settle. So I think as long as we understand why our strings are attached to certain things, that it won't really cause any bad blood between the three of us.
It really feels like, especially in 2019, the impact, and you're seeing it on the Slammiversary match card. All four of you in the World Championship match. You have Jordan Grace versus Deonna Purrazzo, Willie Mack versus Chris Bay, and then the Knockouts Gauntlet match. Like, these are pretty much all relatively new names within the past few years, and I think that's an exciting thing, but more specifically, we've heard so many times about how Ohio's this hotbed for wrestling and so many names like yourself coming out of that area. Why do you think that it's been that strong for so long?
For Ohio specifically?
Yeah, and just now finally getting on a national level with with Impact, you're seeing.
I think, well, Impact is really good at choosing talent. They find amazing talent. If you ask me, we have the best product on TV because we're all the same and we all look the same. So it's really going to boil down to who has the better product. All the bells and whistles are gone right now. We don't have a crowd on TV. No one does. And so you're really going to see in these times, because these are trying times, who's producing good product. And it's not going to be based on all the glamour. And Impact has always done a great job of putting on really good TV, and that's all we're doing right now. And I can tell you, I have some insight on what's going to happen at Slammiversary. This is going to be the best pay-per-view of the entire year for any professional wrestling company yet, and I promise that.
And that's not even...
I think personally why why Ohio is maybe a hotbed for talent is because of where we are geographically. We're kind of placed dead in the middle. We're like Malcolm in the middle of all pro wrestling. If you travel from south, you'll hit Ohio. If you come from, every major highway goes through Toledo, Ohio, and that's specifically where I'm from. And all the time, I have a training school, and I'll have wrestlers reach out like, "Hey, I'm passing through the area. I just want to get a little roll around session with you," and you'd be surprised where they're coming from. But that also, like, it just shows you like how much travel actually goes through Ohio, and they know that guys like, myself, Zach, Dez, Sammy, Josh Matthews, who's on commentary. I mean, like, and people in other companies. There are so many people from Ohio. It kind of speaks for itself. Like, maybe there's something there, and I don't think that there is necessarily anything physically different, but maybe it's just a Midwest mentality. I feel like we're a blue collar kind of state, and you gotta come ready to get your hands dirty. And Ohio's tough to grow up in, and if you make it to where you're trying to go, you probably had to face some trials and tribulations to get there. So I think that Ohio is full of pretty headstrong individuals when we set our minds to something, and maybe that's the difference. If there is a difference, because that's just me speaking from perspective. I'm not from the West Coast, I'm not from the East Coast, but I've traveled to both. They're so different styles, and I feel like maybe the Midwest is just kind of a hybrid, because I say next to Ohio is probably Chicago, Illinois for producing some of the best talents I've ever even got to share a building with.
And I think going back to your point about this being a great pay-per-view, it's not a bold claim either, because coming off of last year and even including Hard to Kill, Impact did put on some of the best events of the year. So I think we're going to see more of that. And I want to change topics a little bit just because today is the anniversary of Hulk Hogan joining the NWO, and I always kind of like to get nostalgic. So do you have any memories of that watching as a kid? Just seeing like...
No, I didn't. Actually, because as a kid, I was not a fan of WCW at all. I was pretty unaware actually of how good the product was. I was the youngest of 8 brothers growing up, and everyone watched the Attitude Era, and excluding WCW. So I watched when my older brothers watched, and my older brothers never switched it to WCW, and so I was groomed to like what I like. And then the moment I started, so like when the invasion happened and we started getting guys like when Booker T made his way over and Lance Storm and like really good cruiserweight guys, I'm just like, I think the only person that I like full on accepted, I love this guy, was Eddie Guerrero. When Eddie Guerrero made the jump, I'm like, maybe this will save it for me. But they were so heavily inclined on the storyline part of it that I couldn't get with it because I just did not like WCW. So for the NWO era, I honestly, I didn't watch it.
Fair enough. And I'll get you out on this. I've been asking people for their recommendations for a feature called the Watch List. Everybody was worried about not having wrestling content during the pandemic. That's obviously not the case. Impact's done a great job of staying on air. But do you have any matches from your own career or any from one of your favorites as a kid or even now, just a match that you've paid particular attention to that, you really think people should give another look?
One of my own matches. I mean, it was a pretty recent one back in December, and it's my favorite match I've ever been a part of. It was a 6-man tag for Warrior Wrestling, Dez, Zach, myself, versus Rocky Romero from Roppongi Vice, Amazing Red, who was my favorite wrestler as a teenager, who literally, my best friend Brent, who I'm sitting here with now, one day I was sitting in my house, he calls me and goes, dude, there's this dude on TV right now, and you look just like him, bro. You got to come see him. So I run 2 houses down to my best friend Brent's house, and Amazing Red is standing there with Don West cutting a backstage promo, and then he went to wrestle Kurt Angle in the match, and he's making adventures like, dude, this dude's, I was 15 at the time, back then everyone was telling you how big you have to become, so I'm like, this is a guy that's not too much bigger than me, kind of physically looks like me. This is the most inspired I've ever been to, like, give this all I got. So when I actually got to meet him that day, just how nice he was and how responsive and receptive he was, and then we actually did the match, and Will Ospreay was a part of it too, and Will Ospreay is one of the best wrestlers in the entire world right now, and one of the most popular as well, and if you can hold your own against any of those three, that really says a lot about you. So to do that match and then have some of the talks and experiences after the match was just, if you go back and watch the match, once it's over, you see Dez, Zach, and I just bawling our eyes out. And I sat down on the bottom rope because I just couldn't keep tears from flowing out of my eyes. It was like it was probably the best feeling wrestling's ever given me in my entire life. Was because they always say don't meet your heroes. Your heroes will crush your dreams. They're not what you expect. And I met my heroes that day, and they were just the most amazing people to do work with. And then to get some of the feedback from them and create some of the memories and bonds with them that I did, I don't know how I'd ever be able to pay that back, because I thought this is probably the coolest thing that's ever happened to me, and I would gladly speak about it. Obviously, WrestleCon didn't happen this year, but TNA, we were going to do a TNA throwback show, and I messaged Amazing Red, or I had tweeted that I wanted to wrestle Amazing Red. I would do whatever I had to, and Amazing Red messaged me on Twitter and goes, hey brother, if you can make that match happen, I would love to do it with you. And the 15-year-old me just broke down, like you can wrestle someone one time and it can mean something to you that it doesn't mean to the other person, and all you know is how you feel and hope that it is full circle. And that's something that you kind of wonder when you have some of these experiences, like, oh man, did I act like too kind of like childish acting, meeting his hero, was I a little too over the top? But to see that he saw the genuineness in us and reached back out to me after just making a tweet, I thought that was just one of the coolest things in the entire world, and I'll never forget that memory. And just knowing that it happened off of one match that we had, it's mind-blowing, because there's so many wrestlers that struggle after having a single bad match, and they want to quit, and they feel like, oh, I'll never do this right, and they'll watch the next guy have a good match, and wrestling does such a good job at making you feel like the best person in the world and the worst person in the world. And so that's, whenever I'm feeling down on myself, I watch that match, because it reminds me that not everyone that you meet is a bad person. You can meet your heroes, and it can be a positive experience for you, and that things can better. Because before that match, there were a handful of times where I thought, I'm done with this, I'm not good at wrestling, I'm tired of seeing myself on TV, I'm tired of reading the negative remarks I may get, and that match just showed me this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, and this is why I need to continue.
That's really cool that you got that positive experience coming out of that. And I think I'm going to have to find it online, but I know that the match, the 6-man you're talking about, it's on the Warrior Wrestling Best Of that just came out. So if people can get it on high spots, or hopefully they can watch
awesome. That. That's really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I just saw they came out with the advertisement on High Spots. So, all right, Trey Miguel, it has been a pleasure talking to you, and you have a big match, Slammiversary. We could be talking to you in the future as world champion. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.